So I'm going to go over
Positive, negative.
some because you were muted before. I'm going to go over some of the Xebec questions that the Davy Jones stuff that we spoke about before. Just some of the topic
Sure.
titles and sort of get your thoughts. Davy Jones is obviously connected to the abyss, the deep sea. So do you think there's any allusions there to Davy and water, and maybe Emu and water, or maybe Emu being weak to water? Obviously, Xebec said it in a way that's like provocative to Emu, like counter what Emu's about, right? It was like a middle finger, like a fuck you. I like Davy Jones. So do you think that that reveals some sort of weakness to Emu?
Yeah. I'm just also trying to understand the context of what it is. To me, like Emu is or Mu is a dark presence maybe possessing somebody, but at the same time, it's like they're on top of the largest landmass there is, like Earth. Like if you were some kind of sea god, wouldn't you be in the sea? And going on the murals, they talk about like the Earth god being, and having the Hellbent serpent against the Sun god. And it seemed like the sea god raged against the dying of the Sun god in the second stage, and like the fourth god created the plants or the fruit that like kind of like the devil fruit, like trap the demon souls. So I'm a bit fuzzy on how Emu set in. Like, are they the sea god? Are they the earth god? And where they're at and like how they possess, because it would seem like the opposite to
Yeah.
me. But based off any of that stuff, going with Xebec and Davy Jones. Davy Jones is notoriously, even Robin said, was a pirate. So whether he is a demon, whether he's a pirate who's cursed, or a pirate who is possessed by a demon, maybe made a deal, is that somehow trapped in the ocean or in the deep sea. And we have the Davy Jones locker. We have like the deep sea current, along with the like 2,000 years put through there, as well as the sea forest, where we have everything that's collected goes there, which we see like everything that the sea takes, Davy Jones takes, would means it would end up there, like the coins or anything treasure they drop in, and the sea forest might go along too with the Shandians and the souls. Like maybe that could also be like souls go there who are traded. Maybe in the Davy back fights or things beforehand that we were talking
I
about.
do.
Obviously, we have the idea of Vanderbilt.
Well, I
Sorry,
was
go
going to
ahead.
say, I do think the trees are the sea forest. You mentioned them being potentially like evoking the trees in the Shandorian trees that like the Shandia trees that like hold the souls of their ancestors. And it's interesting because, like I said before, the sea forest was shown with Joy Boy's debut, someone who's no longer around. There were whales all around it, and there was two poneglyphs in there. So Joy Boy definitely is connected to the sea forest, and he is someone who was, we presume, has previously died and is being kept alive through inherited will and stuff. But also, the poneglyphs themselves represent sort of a message from the past, right? Like the soul of people that have died, because Roger can hear them through the probably through the voice of all things or whatever. But it so yeah, I can completely see the parallel, and like there's two sides to this. I'd say Davy Jones is a narrative. You could talk about him and Emu, their relationship, the cruise, the Void Century, if he's from the Void Century. But like you say, there's this other side of it where it's Davy Jones and the sea and the currents and the abyss, and like what does that mean for the general story? So yeah, that's interesting for sure. Um,
Well, yeah, even depending where like how you say Joy Boy, and that's where I was found. I mean, he could even be Davy Jones or a version thereof. Maybe that's his dark side. That would be funny. Like, what if for every good person that was their negative side? For every Nika, that was the Yami, the dark side when they changed. For every Joy Boy, maybe Davy Jones is the dark side when he got caught or something.
Yeah, yeah, which plays into what you were saying earlier about like Joy Boy having several different names and maybe needing to change his name from Davy Jones to Binks to whatever. And I think what you were saying earlier about Binks, basically Binks kind of fleeing from the world government and trying to deliver their booze, and maybe Joy Boy was fleeing from Emu and trying to deliver the message, and the D Clan might have been fleeing from the world government and trying to do something similar. So there seems to be this recurring theme of people escaping the grasps of the world government, and Davy Jones might have been someone that falls under that, particularly considering the rules of the Davy backfight and how that shows. It implies that a rule was broken, right? So there was rules that Davy or his crew were supposed to adhere to, which is standard for the world government, usually some dodgy rules, and then he broke that rule and then was persecuted for that, or his crew broke it and he stepped forward, or loads of different variations. But um, it does lead me to ask. We're talking about.
We'll even have like Momo.
Say again.
ships. I was gonna say even that's even alluded to like in Wano on that when they had to leave because of persecution and went to the the new village where Zoro and that is.
Yeah, that's a really good example. Like, we don't have any conclusive answers around why the 22 or however many people left, or was it 22 years ago? I think it happened. The 60 people or whatever left Wano and established two villages. One of them being Shimatsuki village, the other one we're not too sure about. So, yeah, that's really interesting. That might be.
We even have the giant Toon Valley La who went to Elbath to go off, and we have a lot of people leaving on ships to explore that, then like getting away from something. But sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's interesting, and we'll talk about the man marked by flames a little bit later. But he's got black sails which match Van der Decken's Flying Dutchman, which is the ship of Davy Jones. The man marked by flames supposedly has whirlpools, and we've speculated for many years now that whirlpools might take you down to some deep sea current that's otherwise inaccessible. So, yeah, but we'll talk about him in a sec. I was going to say, considering we talk about Davy Jones and the deep sea, I mentioned earlier about Hachi having a cover story, and in that cover story, a shark takes Hachi to the deep sea, the bottom of the ocean, and inside a fridge, we see there's a devil fruit. Now, a shark has recently been associated with Emu, so this cover could imply that Emu, or this could be a relationship between Emu and Davy, and maybe a devil fruit. But anyway, it leads me to ask, do you think Davy had a devil fruit or was involved in devil fruits, or what do you think his relationship is to the whole devil fruit curse, let's say?
Well, that's interesting because we find out from Shanks and that the Sea Devil is the one to curse all Devil Fruit users. So we don't know if like people originally stole the Devil Fruits or that the Sea Devil just was against individuals who, for instance, I think it's in the mural, the second age. It said the forest god like took the demons and put them into. Basically, the idea is like they became the Devil Fruits. So if the forest god did that and then the sea god cursed against them. Maybe Davy Jones was against them and didn't it took taking the power of the gods or something like that, or maybe he traded in order to get the powers, or that's what he found in the chest or something, the treasure, but he was forced to stay in the locker. And maybe that's he made it a trade off where he stayed and the devil fruits were released, and now he's trying to find a way to for someone to take his place. Um,
Yeah,
which kind of goes along with the one movie.
yeah, it's interesting, definitely interesting, and we can definitely talk about that in a sec about like that whole Bootstrap Bill's son situation with the Davy Jones from the Disney movie. Um, but I was going to say, so we were mentioning a second ago about the sea forest, and the mural tells us or strongly implies that the forest god is the one that departed devil fruits. So potentially, if devil fruits came from the sea forest, they might be the reason why devil fruit users might drown is they might be being pulled to the sea forest, or maybe pulled towards Davy Jones or something. So yeah, I get what you're saying. Davy might have some role to play in the
Davy
origin.
Jones could have flooded it. Yeah, maybe they're trying to get back to the forest, and Davy flooded that. Possibly that whole area could have. I mean, it is the deepest part, so it wouldn't make sense. But maybe at one point it wasn't. It wasn't flooded. Maybe that was able to walk on, and then the sea god or something like that flooded the area.
Yeah, I mean,
Trying to
it's
get back to the
situated right at the
chest
base of
area.
the Eve Tree, very close to Fishman Island. If the Eve Tree was above the sea level at one point, then maybe yeah, the sea forest was also above sea level. It is interesting because, to reiterate, it says that all things in the ocean at the bottom of the sea end up at the sea forest, which is one-to-one analogous with what Davy Jones's locker is. So yeah, it's strange. It's
That might go along too with Jim Bay talking about the green room when he's being chased by Big Mom and he goes to go in between the wave under it. He talks about going into the green room, and then Brook and Chopper say, "Oh, the afterlife," or "This is heaven." And the green room, he's like, "No, it's the place where like we used to play as kids and things like that." But I think it's also a reference to the Fiddler's Green, which is like 50 years as a it's supposed to be when you go like when you die and you either go into the sea or the Elysian fields, or it's like 50 years. It's like 50 years as a sailor or something like that. Then you're allowed to retire, or like you die and you go into that, which is also kind of funny because that's Brook, the amount of time Brook spent in the Florian Triangle. But what if that green room is basically a reference to, plants, the forest, the room of green, Fiddler's Green.
That is interesting. And
Brook plays the
Brook is
fiddle.
primarily, obviously he's a musician, but primarily he is a fiddler. Like, it doesn't sound great, but he's a violinist, right? So, or someone who plays the fiddle. So yeah, that is interesting and it fits. And I don't know, I'd never really thought about it, but maybe the Florian triangle, maybe the fact it's a triangle is relevant. Maybe the way we've seen summon in circles, maybe the triangle. I don't know. You can access the green room to that through that or something, but. Yeah, there is still this mystery that hangs around Brook about how long it took him to find his body. So it could be that he was in Davy Jones' locker or the green room or this space in between, which we see evoked at the moment via the abyss
Soul is green.
through the Holy Knights. Sorry, what?
Well, usually soul and anything dealing with death also has the green tint to it. Like Brook, when he leaves his body, has a green tint as
That's that.
well.
That is actually what made me think of
Soul.
what I was saying. Is that's what I was going to say. Is he has the green spirit that leaves his body, right? And then that is mirrored by Hera or Misery, which is Big Mum's. Like, so you got the Soul King and the Soul Queen, Big Mum. Sorry, Brook and Big Mum, and Brook has the green spirit that comes out of him, and Big Mum has the green misery that comes out of her. So, and that seems green. 3 Day Trip a couple of years ago used to speak a lot about how green is represents will in a lot of media and just generally, like so yeah, that's interesting.
Well, it might even go with the Emerald City in that too.
Completely.
Like maybe the Emerald City isn't just for the Green Room or the forest, the sea forest, or
Brilliant.
something
Yeah.
like that, or this
Yeah.
place where Davy Jones
3 Day
resides.
concluded that it might be a city made of will, and I really like the idea. But this other idea that like it's maybe a city between realms or something. I mean, God Valley is a really good example because God Valley islands have been destroyed in the One Piece world, and they've been islands that have been destroyed have been discussed. There's been references to stuff that is powerful enough to destroy an island, but whatever happened to God Valley seems different. It seems stranger. It seems to have disappeared properly, not just been destroyed. So that, and we know about what the Yami does, and we've seen fruits with dimensions and stuff like Caribou's swamp fruit. So yeah, it could be that the God Valley, for example, is gone into the green room or into Davy Jones' locker. There's a lot of options this kind of opens up, and I wonder if this is where maybe immortality plays a role. Maybe if there's a way to manipulate this space, or the people, I think they use in a lot of media they call them primordial beings, right? The powers that came before what we see in the story, and maybe yeah, they had the ability to traverse this space, or I don't know, maybe death doesn't, maybe people can be immortal through stuff like the abyss.
Yeah, well, at least like their soul. I think it's more ethereal or primordial beings usually in the past are like more thoughts or substance, and then they moved into at least Greek mythology and that you moved into the Titans, who actually were the things themselves. Like Oceanus was like the ocean. Its body was the ocean. Like Uranus's body was the sky. And then later on, like you get the actual like Olympian gods who were, they had rule over it, but they weren't exactly a part of it. So you had Neptune or Poseidon, who was the king of the ocean, but he lived in it. It was his domain, but he wasn't the ocean themselves. So the sense of this primordial being, at least like going along with Greek gods like Tartarus and things like that, like they wouldn't die. They would get reborn. That's why they were kept in Tartarus, the ones who were defeated, like the Titans and that, because they didn't fully die. They were regenerated. Um, so maybe it's something like that. Maybe the primordial beings were like Nika or like the sun god of the four original, or maybe five gods if there was an earth, forest, sun, and rain. Maybe there was a sea god, and as they died or something like that, maybe their powers were imparted or stolen by man and put into fruit. So then there's a connection between those souls. Like every person who eats a fruit or dies of that, like their will goes back to the source. Maybe that's Davy Jones' locker. So every time they're reborn or reincarnated, their soul is trying to remember back to, maybe to remember who they were because their memories are constantly taken. Um, there's legends in like Greek mythology that when you go down to Tartarus and that there's two rivers, one Mestinimus basically it means memories. And when somebody dies, it says like you have many lives, and you're trying to get to like the perfection of it, and to get to like at peace or the Elysian fields or afterlife. And when you drink from the that river, or you're in that river, you remember all your past lives. And then there's another river, a river called Leave, where you forget after you drink it all your memories, and then you're reborn because they don't want that pressure or that weight from all your past memories to make those mistakes and that again. So you're given another chance to go through and try again. So maybe it's something like that. Maybe they're trying to reach their soul keeps going through and they're trying to remember something from their past to complete the cycle or at least to break the cycle. Maybe that they're stuck in.
Mm. That
Maybe the green room is like, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting idea for sure. And it just plays into like so many different like sort of major themes in the story that we're talking about. It's yeah, that is interesting. Also, I was going to say about bear with me. Right. So next thing I was going to say was about the SBS. So Oda has covered in SBS 38, and Blackbeard's numbers are 38. It referenced Davy Jones, from the chapter 306, in which like Hachinosu or Pirate Paradise was mentioned, Davy Jones was mentioned, stuff like that. So there's a load of connections there, but in the SBS, and we got a picture of him as well in the SBS. But in the SBS entry, Oda says that he was basically he starts by saying there's many different versions of this tale, telling us that this might not be true or it's probably not true. It's probably government propaganda. It says that he was a greedy pirate that basically was so greedy that he was punished for it by the gods and was sent to the bottom of the ocean and was cursed to live in like to be immortal at the bottom of the sea, basically cleaning up all the treasure because he's so greedy. If he wants it that bad, he can be cursed down there forever to live off it. But in the rules of the Davy Back fight itself, it tells us the first rule is that that if a crew member is lost to the other team, they must pledge allegiance immediately. The second rule is that the only way to win somebody back is via a Davy back fight. The third rule is that if you break any of the rules, then or try to avoid the consequences of them, you down to for eternity for bringing disgrace to pirates. So it gives us some narrative, like some idea of, for example, they refer to him as a pirate. We know that Joy Boy was the first pirate, so this implies that it's Void Century onwards rather than being in the first era. But yeah, it implies some other stuff. So, Will, what's your thoughts? Do you think that maybe, Davy lost crewmates in a Davy backfight, or do you reckon crewmates were trying to get him back with a Davy backfight? Where do you think it comes from?
Um, Interesting. A couple things just to hit real fast. I always find it funny when Oda says it's a legend. Like all legends come true in One Piece. That's basically just another way of saying, yeah, this is right. But the other funny thing with that is I think Papag, the
Yeah.
starfish, when we first see Vanderdecken, we have like the mythical aspect told by Brook, and then they ask Papag the same thing, and he says legends are usually like stories that have some like truth to them, but basically there's a different idea to it. It's like, is Vanderdecken really immortal? Is like, well, he came down here and he died afterwards. So it's like there is that perception thereof. It's something in between. Is he immortal? Possibly. I mean, we have seen beings who could do that, but at the same time, there is that like the government propaganda aspect or their different perception, like Vegapunk talked about. It's like one guy's uh, freedom fighters and other guys terrorists kind
Mhm.
of thing, where it's like it all depends on whose side you're on or how you see their viewpoints as their perspective. So, I mean, I think we have devil fruits, but at the same, and there's these mythical fruits that maybe they're magical, maybe they're scientific, maybe they're both. But at the same time, they do have like these magical properties to them, or at least like supernatural properties. So I would say definitely we have like emu, we have all this, so Davy Jones at some point, I think maybe like Vanderdecken possibly or any of these guys was a regular man, but then in the cursing, maybe cursed, and curse could be a different aspect of like a power or a spell put on somebody, maybe hypnosis, or just had something happen to them where it changed them, and then they were forced to be trapped somewhere. Maybe they took on a demon or something like that and gained the powers. or just somebody who's very powerful in that, is stuck in this place and is somehow manipulating the world, like with these Davy back fights. Maybe this domino reversey seems very similar to that, just in a grander scale. Maybe they're part of a game, and the only way that Davy Jones can be released from the locker is to get everybody to join on his side. But people keep changing back and forth. So maybe he has like an emissary or avatar, like Emu sent out into the world, that whose job it is, because that Davy can't leave the locker. It's Emu's job to get all the people, uh, Davy back or Domino reversied into the dark side, and then he can be released. Maybe that's the key to opening his prison.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
maybe I always thought it was funny too, like how maybe's not just a place to go. Maybe it's a prison for something or somebody as well. Like maybe guarding it or kept
yeah,
kind of like lost or
yeah.
something like that.
We've
But
seen a couple like kind of examples of that before. We still don't have answers for, like Scotch and Rocks, two sort of giants covered in fur in the snowy climate guarding something, but we don't know what. It's strange, and they're holding guns as well, which is different to what we usually see with Albathian warriors. Um, Okay, so let me just go back a sec. Oh yeah, so first things first, like yeah, the Davy back fight does seem to evoke like the Domi Reversi stuff, where like these crewmates are not just being switched, but they're turning like going on to the other team. They're turncoating, which we've seen in previous parts of the story. So particularly around Hina, Django, and well, his cover story goes into sort of not more detail because it's only images, but it shows us that like Django was a pirate that became a uh, a, a marine, and through his journey with Hina in the cover story, they recruit other pirates to become marines. So there's definitely a precedent in the story, and in other cases as well, like in the story where people are being switched to another team, and whether that be via some strange hypnosis or some strange, I don't know. There's definitely like Gunko in Elbaf seems to give off this vibe that Gunko has a strong belief, a faith, and something that she's heard or been told has really cemented this perspective. Um, I forgot what I was saying, but yeah. And I was gonna say,
it is interesting if it's a procedure, almost like a spell or
say
something like
again,
that.
sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. I was saying it's interesting, like all the rules and things like that seem like a procedure in order for things to work or happen. Like Django with his hypnosis, like he has to like say 1, 2, 3 Django. Like with the devil fruits, there's certain rules like they have to follow with them. With the Davy back fights, there's rules like you have to start with firing a pistol to say that that you accept. You have to like take 3 coins or as many coins as many fights. The standard is usually three, and drop them in the ocean to like pay boon to Davy Jones to allow the fight to
Yeah,
happen. Like
agree.
there's a certain procedure of things that have to happen to
Yeah, there's traces of like contracts being made all over the story for sure. And the pistol with Luffy firing the pistol as a to accept the challenge of the Davy backfight is such a good example of this. And then we saw Xebec in the flower room holding a pistol after saying he captured 5 kings, almost like they were going to be crewmates for him to have a Davy backfight with Emu about or something like that. But apparently that didn't happen, and instead Zebek realized he couldn't do anything and left, and then just said it as a little passing comment. So, but I think it was GT earlier who made a good point.
one of it's tied into Oxford Bell too.
Say again?
Sorry. I was just gonna say real quick that I would like all these procedures and things you do. I wonder if like the Oxloid Bell, the ringing of it every year, 8 times for the past, 8 times for the future, 16 total. I wonder if that's some kind of contract or procedure or kind of thing
Well,
like that.
interestingly,
People
like
who can hear it.
Neptune tells us, right, that like if an outdated tradition can become a curse. So maybe the curses are that like
Mm-hmm.
some of these contracts are still in play, metaphorically speaking. Like, um, maybe the bell needs to be rang for a different reason now, or to bring it, like for example, to bring in the dawn rather than to bring in the dusk the moon era that we're in currently. So yeah, interesting. Cool.
Or guide the light.
Yeah. And Brook is kind of a relevant character there because, like we said about Sharon, like the ferryman, you give him a coin when you cross the river Styx, and Brook definitely plays that character, and he seems to tie in here. Like we were given this relationship. We were like, there was a relationship indicated between him and Gunko very recently, and then soon after that, we see Gunko in the flower room with Xebec talking about Davy, and Brook's fruit. It's very reminiscent of like Davy Jones and his job, taking, like ferrying people, the dead, basically, to the locker and back and stuff like that. Like, so Brook seems to maybe play a role here as well.
Brook has a lot of themes like Brad, where he's ferrying the people across. He's also an individual who ties in like the past to the present. I even think like he may have sex tied into the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, where he's like the last survivor, and he's like kind of cursed to wander and to tell his story, like the Mariner does,
Well, something
while the rest of his crew
something
died.
we
And
do see is Van der Decken has the Flying Dutchman. So if Davy Jones is wandering around, it's definitely not on his ship as it was before. And like we said, the Flying Dutchman, which should should have been his ship originally. Well, Davy Jones, because like Davy Jones's ship is the Flying Dutchman. Van der Decken the First was a character that was cursed to live in the sea for eternity, and he's supposedly the captain of the Flying Dutchman, which is now passed down all the way to Van der Decken 9, someone who has the same name, just with a number that indicates that he's a future generation, right? So almost implying that they're the same person or something like that. But what I was going to say is that if Van der Decken isn't Davy Jones, and Davy Jones is an actual character, then it would mean Davy Jones doesn't have his ship anymore. So if he is still alive and wandering around or something, he's doing it either by foot or he's caught up somewhere or he's dead.
maybe Davy Jones is just a name, like a title, like man marked by flame. Maybe it just passes on to the next cursed person or takes the title, like kind of like the movie with Will Turner takes on after the actual Davy Jones,
Hmm.
like the person who's um, next person who's supposed to take on that role of being cursed, or I don't know, just maybe it's a position instead.
Yeah, like
I do find it interesting. Like, there's a lot of different cruise ships in the story, and also we find the Flying Dutchman down along with the Noah. Two predominant different types of ships, at least in legend.
yeah, and it goes back to what we were talking about before we were recording, which is like we've there is starting a pattern is starting to develop. Binks, somebody who's associated with delivering this alcohol, but still a mysterious figure, no information linked to Joy Boy. And we have Joy Boy himself. When he was with Emeth, he only saw a silhouette. And then now we're hearing this name, Davy Jones. So it could be that, like, yeah, these are all the same person, or, just under different identities or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, we have those factors. I guess there could also even be like Davy Jones going all the way back. There's different individuals, but I think the oldest idea was that he was the ghost of Jonah, and Jonah and the whale was swallowed by a whale, which we got like the whole idea of Laboon and creating like islands or things like that, or making so could tie into to some aspect of that. Maybe Davy Jones's locker is inside of a whale or as
Yeah,
well.
I think that is fascinating. This idea you mentioned earlier about Jonah and the whale and stuff, and like this idea that I've spoken before about Joy Boy getting stuck in a whale and then reaching Laugh Tale that way, kind of clumsily, inadvertently. Luffy can't swim. Luffy's prone to drowning. He's nearly been sucked down a whirlpool in chapter 1. So there's clues there. But yeah, if Davy Jones, as in Jonah, maybe was in the whale, then we spoke about the fact that would likely put him in the Shiryu stream that goes all the way around the world and goes to the sea forest, connecting the two deeply. So yeah, it's possible. It's possible for sure. And if something like that did happen, then his family or something like that might have presumed him to be dead, which we've kind of seen alluded to in other parts of One Piece, right? So, and if that was the case, then it would, rather than like, so say Joy Boy was swallowed by a whale, rather than him fleeing his kingdom, kind of mirroring what happened with Buddha, instead he might have just been adventuring, tried to swim into the sea and drowned, and then a whale took him up. And it's the same with Davy Jones. Maybe Davy Jones kept him in the sea, kept him alive under the sea forever, or something like that. But yeah, it's strange. And there's also a lot of I mentioned about the rules.
I was gonna say real quick, if it could be like the idea of frozen or even like time delay, like we see with the Nora beam, we see in Elbath, like it seems like a time dilation. We see in the being frozen and that in this ice blocks and things like that. Like it might be some kind of variation where wherever he's at, like he's either frozen or time is frozen or it's slowed down or something like
Completely, completely. And I think, you and I have been talking about stuff that a lot of people would have thought was more of an abstract thing for a while now, and now these things are actually coming to fruition. I think these things are more likely. Cube has been saying for years about everyone being in a dream world, or there might be a part of the One Piece world that is stuck in this other state, like a dream state. And I've spoken before about Blackbeard's Yami potentially having a
that.
dimension like Obito and Kakashi that we saw in Naruto. I think Film Red. I'm not a hater when it comes to filler and the movies when it comes to One Piece, because they are all kind of relevant and there's some juicy spice in there. But it's painful how much Film Red sort of touches on this idea and like really loudly says that there is this sort of bubble that some people in the world live in, or part, like, like you say, Davy Jones might be in this place that's separate from the world that we know. I mean, Laugh-Tale itself is an island that no one can find, right? It could be under Reverse Mountain, which means it's completely like cut away from the rest of the world, and it's definitely possible.
Well, we've seen different dimensions in the story too with Brule and the other guy starts with a B, the CP9,
Uh,
the bartender. God, what's his name?
yeah, Ray loves him. Bruno.
Bluno.
Oh, yeah, Bueno. Yeah,
Bluno,
Yeah, Bruno.
BL.
Yeah. I've got that picture of a Kinder Bueno with him coming out.
But he's got the other dimension. Basically, he goes into with
Boardwalk
his
Crew.
door. Yeah.
Yeah, and also never really thought about this, but he's a Cypher Pole 9 member, right? And we know how like Oda rolled, right? So for a Cypher Pole 9 member to have a dimensional fruit like that, that definitely could be a clue, man. Like, and there's other clues. For example, Gorvalia, I mentioned earlier, has disappeared. That to me seems so fitting with the fact that we've seen like the whole of, was it Logtown that disappeared when Blackbeard sucked the whole village up?
It's an island that started with a
Yeah,
B.
yeah.
I was looking that up the other day.
Uh,
Oscaro Town or something like that.
yeah,
And like
Ace versus
he stuck the whole town in, and then he came out afterwards. And then he also used it again in Impel Down, like some of the guards in that at the top when they're first entering. Like he sucked them into the dimensional, kicked them out,
yeah.
which just seemed to destroy all buildings. But I think people seem to still be okay when they get out of it.
Yeah, that's convenient. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's strange because, as I mentioned earlier, when in chapter 306, when the first is Donut Race, I think the chapter's called, and the Davy back like fight starts, and they explain all the rules. They also reference, like I said, Paradise Island, which is Hachinosu, we know now, and we are introduced to Davy back. To Davy Jones, and Xebec said Davy Jones, and Blackbeard is Xebec's son, both of whom have been rulers of Hachinosu. So there does seem to be a connection there between Davy and Hachinosu and the pirate, king and stuff like that.
That's interesting with the donut race that you say that, because in the donut race, what do they have in the middle of it that Nami's going through? They have where she shows that diagram of the whirlpools, all one side going to the left, all side going to the right, and then they have the one path that goes to the very center with the concentric circle whirlpool in the middle, like the one path through like the red portal.
It's eerily, it just eerily gets closer and closer for me anyway to the Man Marked by Flames. Like, obviously, I'm not the biggest preacher of who it's going to be. You've heard my thoughts. I think it might be a load of different people, like all at the same time, kind of like the meaning of the D. But GT and some other people have some very strong convictions on who this is going to be. But it seems to me that there's definitely...
Those whirlpools might be a path or a portal to get to Davy Jones. Maybe that's or Laugh-Tale or something.
I think so. I think that
could be the same place.
I think that whirlpools are...
Davy Jones.
Yeah. Well, what did you say about whales earlier?
That they guided people. Oh, the white strom, like the whale pod, the blue whale pods. When they're moving, the white strom usually follows right behind them, which warp you different places. So maybe speed or that, like it can actually take you through or fast enough to wherever you got to go. Yeah. Which I mean is basically a whirlpool.
Which is like the Taraya current has sea kings in. We don't know why, but it has sea kings in. It's a current that goes round to allow people to travel quicker, just like the winds in the real world. And yeah, so and fishermen are known to be able, like explicitly stated, to be able to create currents with fishman karate. So it would appear to me for sure that currents are used to, that like they can be used, maybe not to access Laugh Tale directly, but there's something going on there. Their access points to the Shiryu stream or something. The fact that there's one right in between Marineford, Enies Lobby, and Impel Down, like being protected by 3 massive gates, seems to me like very, very suspicious. Like, what happens when you go all the way down and follow that down? You know, it's strange.
Well, it might be tied into like entry and access points to like just the deep sea current, all of it. But maybe you can jump in and out of it, so you're not stuck in those
I believe so. I believe that the hot and cold water on the way to Fishman Island was shown to create a downward plume. We know that volcanoes under the water around Marijua, so on the opposite side of the world, erupt every 1,000 years, which would imply that a downward plume is created, and that's how you get to Reverse Mountain. Now, if you require a downward plume to reach under Reverse Mountain or Fishman Island, then surely a whirlpool that goes all really deep, that's going to take you there without the need to wait for the every 1,000 years for the volcanoes to erupt.
Mm-hmm. Well, the two bigger factors, like you were saying, was cold and salinity. How much salt?
Yes.
It seemed like the saltier the water, and also the colder the water, the more it goes down, as opposed to like the knock-up stream, which is heated water that's shot directly up into the air. So probably less, or even like icebergs or that, which would probably be contain less salt, so they would
Yeah.
float.
Yeah, I think the volcanic eruptions are quite like particularly underwater ones are quite salty, I think, aren't they? They deposit.
Well, then you have the pyroblast too.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Well, it's the idea too that they blast pyroblast in the air, which is the keratin, which forms with sea clouds and then can be refined less. So I'm assuming they have some kind of salt in them, maybe because, well, I guess it's any water. Because I was just trying to think like when Luffy or anybody was in the water of the sea clouds that they lost his power. So I'm sure there's always some salt in there, depending how much is unknown at the
Yeah, I mean,
moment.
salinity in War Piece is like its own topic. Salt's been brought up a few times. I think Nami I think it's Nami who talks about salt being in the sea and how much is needed and stuff like that. But yeah, anyway.
Well, right where the downward plume, she says, yeah, the two factors that force the water to go down are coldness and the salinity. So more salt, colder should be more going down.
Interestingly, one of the reasons how I thought originally about the downward plume on the opposite side of the world is because I was reflecting it. Like, it's under Fishman Island, and I was thinking, or it takes you to Fishman Island. I was thinking, what about the other side of the world? That's how you get to Laugh Tale. But interestingly, when they go down the downward plume, that's when that's when the Straw Hats come across the Flying Dutchman. It's Brook who then does the song. Like they're all singing a song. Like, I think it was you who said it was about diamonds or about jewelry or something like that. And then we see the Flying Dutchman, which is Davy Jones's ship in the myth, and it has black sails which match the man marked by flames right after they've gone down a downward plume, which matches the whirlpools. So again, it brings us, Davy Jones. It seems quite tied inherently to the man marked by flames. Go away, Pete.
I do find it interesting that if you look at the map that they show, where Nami's showing how they go down the downward plume, if you look at the drawing, it has an arrow that's bent downward, and it's almost the same kind of arrow and shape when she's showing. They go back all the way to Reverse Mountain and showing if you missed your onward ramp up to the top of Reverse Mountain, you would go straight down, but the arrow is directly the same. So you were talking about what if it's the opposite of Fishman Island? Well, the opposite of Fishman Island and Marijua would be Reverse Mountain. So if that curve takes you downward, if you have a coating in that, there could be, what you said, north to the center. Maybe it's Davy Jones.
Yeah, you said that like Davy might be somewhere that's isolated from the sort of reality that we know on the blue planet. So maybe time's different or something like that, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, like that's on the other side. So we saw Flying Dutchman, Davy Jones's ship, around Fishman Island in the downward plume. We put that on the other side, then we get to Reverse Mountain. We go under Reverse Mountain, and it could be that Davy Jones is at Laugh Tale. it might be again. This could be Joy Boy, like Joy Boy could be Davy Jones, might be different people. But if we see in his ship at Fishman Island, it implies that we might see Davy at Laughtail or around that area.
Yeah. Oh, just if you, in case you did wonder about that song, the Vanderdecken song, they say, "What is use a dead man for a diamond ring in a land so black he can't see his own regrets? So go a hunting for the deep, deep treasure troves. Then I'll be the richest man the world has ever known.
Yeah,
I am Captain
yeah.
Vanderdecken."
So and AP in the chat just said about Flying Dutchman and Rudolph and a picture of Chopper, which is really weird because that's what GT was talking about just before he left. Yeah, so going off what you were just saying, Will, we hear diamond ring, diamond ring. So again, like it's a reference. Like we know in Hachi's cover story that he finds a diamond ring from a shark, right? After he goes down and he sees, after the shark takes him to the bottom of the ocean, and he sees the devil fruit in the fridge, which looks like a locker. And this diamond ring would imply that there was some relationship involved, which, again, like GT was saying earlier, there seems to be maybe a relationship between Emu and someone else, or Davy and someone else, which would have played a role in this. And the diamond ring just echoes that. Like, we see this whole suitor situation multiple times. Cobra offers Vivi marriage proposals. Vivi's in a cover story that says bride to be. We have the whole Lola stuff with Loki, and multiple other cases of it in the story as well. Wedding cakes, etc., etc.
What's another name for diamonds? Like a slang term, you know? Isn't it ice?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting too. Like if diamonds, they talk about jewels or gems, like crystallization. Also, like we have frozen things, frozen wills. So like a diamond ring, maybe with reference to the treasure, or that maybe it's frozen, or in this cold climate. Or I don't
Well,
know.
AP
Made me
in the
think of
chat
that.
said rocks. You know, a lot of people call precious stones rocks, particularly diamonds. That's a big rock you're wearing. Diamond and ring associated with marriage.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really big pull.
Minerals, all the stuff in the One Piece world. Yeah.
Now, something this might seem a bit west, but it's before I forget, so I got to bring it up. So when Xebec fights Harold on the Red Line, we see, well, throughout that chapter, we see that Rox has some sort of shock or quake ability, and at the end of the chapter, it says, Xebec's going to shock the world. In the official, it said he's going to make the world quake or something around them lines. When he fights Harold on the Red Line, we see him in the same pose that we see Blackbeard when Blackbeard gets the Gura and uses it for the first time. And it's the same pose that Whitebeard uses when he puts his fingers in the air and pulls down the air to create these shocks. Now, what's interesting here is that we were talking about this earlier, and we were talking about the moon and Kuro and stuff like that. And there is actually another reference to Davy Jones in the story on that same page. So I think the reference is the bottom left panel, right? It's the chapter with Kuro and his two cat subordinates. And on the top right, we see his cat subordinate scratching in the exact same pattern that we see with the Gura. So what's your thoughts on Davy Jones or Xebec and the Gura Nomi? Have you got any, or Xebec's powers in general? Any thoughts?
I mean, it could go along the lines of like back in Greek mythology, Poseidon, before he was even god of the sea, it was, I think he was like a head god over like the different mythologies. Like they had him instead of Zeus, but like he was, also god of the earthquakes and the ocean. So I mean, it may tie in to that. It probably will be, just because I don't think it is, but I have a lot of people who seem to think that that's a possibility that's going to go. So he probably does have the Gura. Um, I don't know if you're talking about the scene where he's winding up to hit with his sword. It almost reminds me of Roger's Divine Departure. So that was more what I saw. I kind of missed but I mean, I can see where people are saying like actually grabbing. I mean, it would make
It
sense
is the same as,
that.
if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the exact opposite. I think Roger's facing the opposite way, but I'm not sure. But I know the pose. That is the pose that we're talking about.
Opposite way between,
But I
yeah,
think Harold
which he might have
attempted
gotten
a
that from
specific
Ross.
pose, I think, and it was Xebec.
But even then, it would make a lot of sense because Sengoku says, and everybody says it's the fruit that could destroy the world. It's like, why would Whitebeard have it? Or how would they know? Because Whitebeard would never have seemed to have used it
Yeah,
like that
yeah, that's a good
unless
point.
like somebody knew it was hurt. One of Rock had it, and then Whitebeard took it for like safekeeping because he didn't want the world to be
Yeah, both
destroyed.
Xebec
Like care about.
and Blackbeard highly associated with the will to destroy things. You know, that's the dream. Um, Also, I should probably mention as well, like Whitebeard does the pose, then he gets the fruit taken by Blackbeard. Blackbeard then does the pose, and two Marines that are watching say that pose. And at the time, it's kind of implied that they're realizing that he has Whitebeard's abilities, but now recontextualized, it would seem that like that they're actually referencing Xebec.
Yeah. It would make more sense with Zebek because we knew that he was a threat against the world, that he had to be disappeared. It's like who would, and if he did possess devil fruit, why wouldn't it be the most powerful paramecia that they say could like, sink or destroy the world? Whitebeard, it doesn't seem have the person. He's strong, but he doesn't have the personality to want to destroy things. And out of all the Rock's pirates, I would list him as one of, if not the most compassionate one. The rest of them, would care less about a lot of stuff. All he wanted was a family, and he wanted to protect his family. And even like, though he was sick and he didn't use a lot of power because it could have, made him die faster, it didn't sound like he was out and around trying to use it to destroy things or take places or that. He was just trying to protect them. So it seemed like it would be the way they describe it more of a rock's power that he used and scared people with.
Interesting, yeah. And there's also this situation, like I've been talking about hearts a lot recently in the One Piece world, and we did just speak about that panel that you mentioned with Davy Jones, when Brook singing the song about the diamond ring and stuff like that. There could be some sort of, I don't know, it plays into immortality in general. I was going to say about Davy Jones might have had his heart removed rather than Emu or Joy Boy, or maybe one of them are the same person, I don't know. But more so just go into the large topic of immortality. No, you carry on if you need.
I was going to hit real fast. Both songs, one, a diamond ring, diamonds are tied to like last forever. So that's a form of immortality where like you actually stay alive and you're the one who's alive. It's usually like a taboo, which we know Rox was the king of breaking taboos. Whereas in Big Sake, it's about going through the night into a new dawn. It's actually like almost trading off to the next generation and that type of immortality as your children or a person to carry on your will while you die. So, it's like two ends of the spectrum. One is a selfish one where you want to be alive above all else and, like a diamond or that. And the other one is like you actually move on through the darkness to a new dawn to the next generation kind of thing.
Interesting. Yeah. Like One Piece is pretty much one of the main themes or recurring themes is what it means to be immortal, what it means to move on, what it means to progress. Inherited will. Joy Boy, living through the inherited will. Emu, like apparently not living through inherited will, instead living unnaturally or supernaturally long.
Staying in one place, frozen, as opposed to progressing and evolving.
Yes, like we spoke about it earlier about Blackbeard, who's a consequentialist. The end justifies the means. Whereas Luffy, so with Emu, Emu's going to commit hard to keeping that straw hat in the freezer. Whereas Luffy, the straw hat means a lot to him, but at the same time, he's just on an adventure, and whatever happens. Like if he finds Lato, that's the direction he's heading, and if he finds it, that's great. But like, it's not like he'd kill his best friend to reach it, unlike Blackbeard, who literally did kill his crewmate to get the Yami.
Well, without his crew, then his dream, he can't even have his dream come true if he doesn't have the rest of his crew's dream come true first. I mean, that's even a side part. That's almost like a third dream that he has. I mean, he wants to be Pirate King. There's the unnamed dream that he has to be the Pirate King in order to get. But even in order to get all that first, if he does, like all of his crew put their dreams on the line in order for him to succeed. But he also, that's part of his bargain. That's his deal with his crew, that he's going to make their dreams come true before his dream or in order for his dream to come true.
Yeah.
So, whereas opposed to Emu is and it's kind of like the moron song that he sings, at least going with that, like the brains in the south are warm and they melt. The brains in the north are cold and they freeze. You have the duality of hot being continuous and moving, or melting out of it. Whereas if you're frozen, you're kind of like all the times we see in One Piece frozen means kind of like you're frozen, stuck in place. Your will is frozen, whether it's Impel Down or Punk Hazard or these places.
Interesting. What were you just saying just before that? Sorry, I was lighting the cigarette. We just saying something right before
that. I said the moron song.
Say that again.
I said the The last thing I said was the moron song about
It was
the
just
brains
before.
melting
It
the
was
south of the
just before
pod
the
and
moron
freezing.
song. Just before the moron song. What made you think of that?
Oh,
Oh, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say.
song
I was going to
singing.
say when we first saw Xebec, when we first ever saw the God Valley flashback, and we saw Xebec's crew jumping off the boat, but we didn't see Xebec. A lot of people noticed that the crew members were showing disrespect, or they were calling Xebec stupid and stuff like that, like very similar to the way the Straw Hats treat Luffy. But it's interesting because we see that like Xebec doesn't care about his crewmates. He's just winning them by Davy backfights, which is not the same as Luffy. Instead, it's the same as Blackbeard. So again, it's another example about how Xebec and Blackbeard, they're consequentialist. They don't care about how they achieve their mission. They just want the best crew to do it. Whereas Luffy, his first request,
Yeah.
crewmate.
Oh, I was talking about the crew. Oh, I was just saying I was talking about his crew's dream, and in order for Luffy can't become the pirate king or fulfill his dream unless he fulfills all of his crew's
Yes,
dream. Like each of their dreams are part of
highlighted
his.
by
He can't continue his ultimate dream.
just quickly. I was going to say highlighted by Zoro, who on multiple occasions says about putting his own dream aside and saying about how teamwork is about like looking after yourself and stuff, so other people can achieve their dreams. So I agree completely with what you said.
I really like what Usopp says in Dressrosa to oh my god, Trouble. Yeah. He says something like he goes, "Don't ever talk that way about my captain," because like he said, like he'd run away. He goes, he's like, "We each of us gladly give our lives in order to fulfill his dream because we know he's doing everything he can and putting his life on the line to do the same
Yeah,
for us."
yeah.
So
Whereas Blackbeard and
the whole idea they
not on
believe it.
that level, like we were talking about Stronger a couple of days ago. Stronger just got, Blackbeard let him get cut straight in half.
Mhm. One thing you were just saying, I just wanted to hit on quick. I find like that we were talking the whole idea about perception of what we see and what actually happened, and maybe it's somewhere between both. It's like Vanderdecken could have been a guy who was turned on by his crew or something like that, or maybe he was saving them by throwing them off. But then at the other hand, too, maybe he was a bad guy. Maybe instead of being cursed, he made a deal with the sea god and he sacrificed the lives of his men to gain their lives in immortality, or like for every man, their life that was killed and thrown in the water, he was given their amount of life in return. So a couple hundred years or something like that. So I mean, there's a possibility for
That's a
both,
fascinating idea. Fascinating
perspectives
idea.
of what could.
Like people, because yeah, there's a lot to say about that. But yeah, yeah. I do like my instincts do tell me that after everything we've been talking about over the past few days, that like Davy, something happened to Davy Jones and his crew were probably to protect his crew or something like that, and his crew were beset on freeing him or something like that, which is interesting because if the Davy backfight rules are to be, adhered to, or like we're supposed to believe them, then it would mean that if they lost, they now work for the world government or Emu. So it could be that Davy Jones's crew or Joy Boy's crew or something like that. It could be implying that they are now agents of the other side. But obviously that's very speculative, and we'll see. But I would still be fascinated to find out if it was Zunisha's crime that caused all this trouble with Davy to begin with.
Yeah, maybe they didn't want to. Maybe it was their job to take out Emu or something like that. And we see in the mural like an Emu like presence standing on top of like a Zunisha type being. So maybe he befriended Emu when he wasn't supposed to or something like that. And he was cursed to wander. It is interesting that he has the pretty much the exact same curse, which of Vanderdecken, and it's the inverse of devil fruit users, where they're forced to wander the ocean and never step foot on dry land, or at least to that extent. Whereas the devil fruit user is supposed to stay on dry land, or if he ever goes into the sea, will be rejected by it or drowned.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. We'll have to see. And I think it was you that was talking earlier about Vanderdecken, about how when Vanderdecken he wanted Shirahoshi so he could be free from the sea or something like that. Is that right?
So the original myth or legend with Vanderdecken, like in real life, is supposed to be if he found a wife, and I'm trying to think like the variation on it. I don't know if the love in that was involved, but basically, if he found a wife, then he could return to land. And then you even have like Pirates of the Caribbean, which in that movie I can't remember. It's a certain amount of years that he's allowed to touch land every once and that, and like he has a child, and the first time he sees him, he's like 7 or 10 or something like that. So depending on whatever kind of mythology and that you want to go, I would think in the One Piece world, at least that's what they say. I was trying to figure out like just strategy wise, like why he would do that. So if you were cursed by a god and you couldn't return to land, like my thing is like you'd probably want revenge on that god. And the Mermaid Princess, unless those were like the rules like he gave, like if you marry the Mermaid Princess, then you can come back to land, you break the curse. That could be one thing. The other thing is if you couldn't break the curse and you just wanted revenge, like getting the Mermaid Princess to do what you say or marry her, you would have control over all the Sea Kings and basically an ancient weapon. So maybe you can rise up and try to attack or fight or you know force the Sea God to lift the curse or something like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, like that kind of evokes the One Piece story, doesn't it? And the world government and like this idea that oh, I was going to say that sorry, I've been on VC like so many hours now, my brain's cooking. But sure, princess, I completely
Inception and things like that and force a situation. I mean, like Frankie or anything else, like whatever they have, they make it like Frankie attacked and they set up a propaganda or false situation, or they use power in that to try to coerce people. At least Vision in
yeah,
that. So
and it kind of like aligns with this idea of like you mentioned God a few times and wanting to kill that God. Well, the God that you want to kill is kind of a devil, right? Like, and we spoke earlier about I think you said it was Shanks that told us that the devil fruits are they long to go back to their what was the quote?
the Sea Devil or the Devil of the Sea curse those who ate the devil fruits or something along
Yeah.
those
So like
lines. Um, Basically, well, you have the whole idea too of like perception. It's just power plus perception. So if they're a good individual and they're very powerful, you would call them a god. If they're a bad thing, but that the same amount of power, you would call them a demon or a
mhm.
devil. And depending if you like, I mean, the celestial dragons are gods if you like them, or don't want to get killed
Well,
by them. And then the D could be seen as devils if you don't want to get hurt by that, but they're actually trying to free
and
people, maybe.
there are some meta details there as well because, for example, in Skypiea, the ancestors are supposed to be kept in the trees, and the trees are worshipped. They're said to be worshipped as deities by Robin, so gods. Like you say, it's a perspective of good. But then tree fever comes along, makes everyone sick, and Nolan cuts down the trees, and people believe that that's an act of God. But we're told in the story by Neptune, as we said earlier, that a curse, a tradition that lasts too long, becomes a curse. So we get like quite a physical manifestation of it in Skypiea with the fact that like they're worshipping the trees, they're not allowing the change. The dawn isn't being allowed to come, and because of it, the trees are now becoming not rotten, but they're spreading disease, and we see that through like Dofi says that power has a short shelf life, whereas it seems that Emu has been in power for very long, 8 centuries at least, right? So it seems that Emu's power has also corroded and become corrupt and become diseased and creating people to be sick all over the world. We see that the mining of amber lead creates amber lead sickness and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, any idea or individual over time rots, even if like the best intentions of that. Like they have to be able to grow to evolve. That's
You still with?
2 to 3 symbols of energy in the 2 to 3 symbols of energy in the One Piece world. You have both the negative and positive. Hello, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I got you. We got you. It cut out, but yeah, we're good.
Hello?
We got you.
Okay. I switched my earbuds. Okay. The idea of the energy in the One Piece world. Basically, you have the two spirals, one positive, one negative, but like a river or anything else. I think it was Avatar that they said like chi or chakra, like they keep flowing. Whether it's good or bad, it keeps moving. Whereas opposed to Emu, they're standing still. And what is their prime design? It's the concentric
Yeah.
circles. It's unbreakable, continuous circles that are
The
stuck in
false
time
infinity,
or you're
yeah.
stuck in the
And we see
flow.
that personified through
Yeah.
the ice that's in Marijua, right? Like ice is associated with unnatural preservation in One Piece.
Yeah. Well, Ringo, they said that it's so cold that the bodies don't
Yeah,
decompose.
so
So we have that. We have
Brook
the
and Ryuma
zombies.
obviously have a relationship because Brook's soul possessed Ryuma's body, but Brook only spent a year and a half, 2 years dead, and his body was completely rotten, whereas Ryuma's body was noted, like explicitly noted to in fairly good condition after how long it has been frozen. So, yeah, the eternal grave in Ring.
Yeah, either 4 to 800 years. It might even be from the Void Century. So
Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, alludes to the fact that One Piece treasure, whatever it is, has to be something that can withstand that much time for us to be able to discover it. So I've speculated it's a heart, but it can't be a natural heart. It has to be something more.
Well, that or it's affected maybe by the abyss. I mean, maybe there's a positive version of the abyss because we see the abyss restore limbs and bodies destroyed by like the God's Knights and Emu and Gorosei and stuff like that. So maybe there's like a positive version of healing, almost like a Moncherry or something type power, but actually an actually useful one that doesn't like stop working.
Yeah. And it's probably
One thing I thought was just terrible. Like, give up your life and it'll fix one thing. Oh, and all the people you heal, yeah, it goes away. So what a useless
yeah,
power.
it's a good probably time to like talk about some powers like that, like Montdior, for example. Never explicitly said to give you immortality or anything like that, but it's very heavily implied that if you go into Montdior's book, you know they can pull you out at any time and you're going to be in the exact same condition. The Opie.
I just finished reading Whole Cake the other day, and they did say, like, at least the version I was reading, when you're stuck in the book, you like are basically kept in time or you
Yeah,
don't age
it
or
says
something
something
like
about
that. So
time.
yeah,
Like
that
yeah, it
other
says
dimension.
something about time and implies that you don't age. And I remember reading it at the time and thinking like, well, that's pretty crazy because the Opie know me. That's why everyone thought it was so special. Gives you the perennial youth surgery, so immortality. But it would appear that there's more to it. You know, there's definitely more to it. And the stuff I mentioned diseases earlier. We see stuff like the sickness of the heart, and if what happens if you've got that sickness but you're immortal. You know, can't die, but you're constantly sick, like stuff like
Mm.
that. There's probably a combination or sort of an alignment or a constellation of details that Emu adheres to. So hence why she can't leave Marige. Well, I say she. I mean I don't know, male or female, but that's probably why Emu can't leave Marige.
Maybe it's like a petrification or something like that over time that your body gets so old. Like the atom tree, parts of it get so old that it actually turns and fossilizes and then becomes like granules of sand, and that's why they have the beach and that there.
Yeah, and Boa's
What is it? Gulliver's Travels.
yeah, but Boa's
Sorry, go ahead.
devil fruit is massively associated with hearts. She fires hearts everywhere, blah blah blah. And what does that do? It petrifies you. So yeah, I think
And Blackbeard has to get the power, user power to petrify
Mhm.
something. So he wants to have something basically kept the same through time, whether it be rocks or who knows, like the red line. Oh, I was going to say real quick too. In Gulliver's Travels, he visits many places, but one of them that he visits, it has immortals. But the immortals, it's just like how you said, they don't die, but they continually still age, and they suffer from all the like you can drink and become immortal, but once you're immortal, like your body still deteriorates and everything else, but you won't die. So they're blind, they have sores, they can't like get up and walk, and so it'd be something along those
yeah,
lines.
interesting. Oh, there's so much to unpack from these past two chapters. It's like not just the Davy stuff, but then there's this whole other thread, like we were just talking about, like immortality, what that means to the story. Um, I can't get over this, like, and I don't know why the community haven't really latched onto it, but you know, Vanderdecken one was cursed by the heavens to be immortal at the bottom of the ocean. Davy Jones is the same. Emu's got tons of immortality um, like threads going on. Joy Boy is immortal through the Will of D. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see it all tied up. And we spoke earlier about how we saw Crocus at the Twin Capes, and we got lore about Laugh-Tale, and then we saw Rayleigh halfway along. Sabaody, we got lore about Laugh-Tale, and it's kind of how we knew Scopper was going to be at Elbath, and him or his son we predicted would give us some lore on Laugh-Tale. Now we've seen he has a son. Um, and the whole time previously in this conversation, we were linking Davy Jones to the man marked by flames, and he is the man who's said to have the last road poneglyph. He also has loads of signs that seem to connect with Davy Jones. So it could be that at Laugh-Tale or at Lodestar or at Reverse Mountain, we are going to meet Davy Jones himself, and he is going to give us the last road poneglyph. Or, you know, we might find his will, we might find his skeleton, something like that. Probably at Lodestar, I personally think. And we'll get the information of the last road poneglyph, and it'll fit the pattern. But this also implies to us that
Maybe they'll petrify and become poneglyphs. That's why you can hear what they're saying
well,
if you have the voice of all
absolutely,
things.
absolutely brilliant. Yeah, like Yeah, what if another form of this immortality? We saw a lot of it in Star Wars, right, with Obi-Wan and Yoda, and like passing on to the other side. What happens if you can be immortal
You
through
write me down.
Pyroin and through the Poneglyphs and stuff like that? Pyroin being a chemical that makes.
Well, I think it goes along too, like memory and ideas. I dropped a picture in that with the memories. You're saying memory snow. We see it in Drum Island. We see it with Nami and the Mary. It's like ash or snow she touches, and the memories that are in there. It's like we see Cloud. I think it's Ymir in Norse mythology. They killed him, and Odin and his two brothers, Vili and V, ripped him apart, and made the world. And what did he make the what did he make the clouds out of? His brains. And we have things like Punk Hazard, um, where they're in clouds, like the memories, the ideas. So what if these ancient races or people, pyroblast is basically keratin, which makes up your whole body, like organs,
Yeah,
horns,
keratin in
feathers,
One Piece is
scales.
stated to be used in Vivre cards from fingernails and hair, and you can use that to track people with some weird
Yeah,
psychic long distance.
and if that's shot up in the air, basically those are memories or things like throughout the whole world. So you have like this memory snow everywhere, or at least the idea is that can greatly enhance clouds or living things, which might also have memories of people or their will. And then possibly what also makes Klabautermen or spirits. Like if you have enough of this willpower and memories, they can actually and enough pyroboin dense enough in one area, like the area like Skypiea, you can probably have manifestations like
Yeah, to
Cloudberman.
give it like just some narrative context, like Hiruluk, when he sacrifices himself, he talks about someone's not dead until they're forgotten. Then he explodes, and then we see all these like cherry blossoms floating down by the sky. From the sky, and then with the Klabauterman scene, the Mary's on fire. We're talking about memories, and then we see this like strange snowy ash coming down, and we've seen it in other scenes where Luffy's kind of predicted it. So yeah, there does seem to be this like it's funny because I know I think it was filler, but in Long Ring Long Land where the Davy Back fight took place, they talk about rainbow mist, right, which is very similar to what we're talking about now, like this mist that descends on people and sort of changes their memories. And it evokes film Red quite huge, like massively, because Uta was really like playing with people's minds and dreams and what they, what their associations and memories and stuff.
Well, just not even memories, but like just life in and of itself. What's real? I think somebody asked Luffy or the holograms. Like it's light, but it's hard and light, and they actually have like uh, wills of their own or like their own minds, but they're actually light and holograms or hard light. And the toys in Dressrosa, they talk about them actually being beings before like uh, Rebecca remembers that that's her dad and they're actually people. Like she's talking about them. It's like they have dreams, they have feelings. They're like us. And even the whole idea with Buccaneers, like Saturn, he says to Kuma, he's like, your people were made to serve or to die. So there's this idea of one race being better than another race because one's artificial and one is really life. And it seems like in this world, imagination, possibly pyroblast or other things in memory, definitely create living beings and like respect and will and where that ideas and perspectives go and come from. And what do you think as a reader?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That I mean, that's a whole nother topic as well. Like how the reader sort of engages with the story and stuff. And personally, it's why I think like we just saw that picture Oda posted with Emu sat in his desk chair. Like people have spoken about the fourth wall break a long time. We see it in Dragon Ball, sort of in a few different Dragon Ball panels and stuff. And we know Toriyama had a big influence on Oda. But other than that, yeah, the memory stuff. I mean, narratively, right now
Toys.
with
Even homies, I was going to say too with Pudding, like she uses that memory move to remind all the homies of their
well, I,
past
I was
lives,
about to
through
bring
their
her up.
souls and
Like
stuff like that.
narratively, memory is super important at the moment because Garp is frozen. He's under he's under Blackbeard's capture, who also has Pudding. So if there's a way to access Xebec's memories or Garp's memories of Xebec using Pudding, then there might be a way to sort of ignite Xebec's spark and bring him back to life, which is kind of what we speculated before about, Crocus nearly said the name of the ancient kingdom. Um, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people have speculated that by researching the Void Century, Vegapunk is almost bringing it back to life. And One Piece just it constantly reminds us that memory is how people live and stuff like that. So unlike Naruto, it's Edo Tensei with a body. Instead, you can do it with a memory. So yeah, I do see that coming.
Well, it's the whole sense again, like how we were saying, it's like what is immortality? Is it the memory of the person that you carry with them, their will? You take their spirit with them, and it evolves into merging and becoming one with the next person, or is it immortality where you stay the same and you try to change the world to suit you or keep it the way you want it remembered, like you freeze the world almost, or you drown it.
Exactly. Yin and
Yeah.
yang, feminine and masculine. You're either trying to change the world to suit you, or you're trying to change yourself to suit the world around you. And a word that I probably should have brought up earlier when you talked about emu is stagnation, right? Like emu's not changing with the times, become a curse to the world. We see diseases everywhere, and that is like a manifestation of emu's rule being stagnant. And there might be
I wonder if emu is going to be like part male and female, because that would be almost the rebus in alchemy, like the perfect being of male and female combined. So maybe some like a
yeah,
reference to
I mean,
that.
I don't want to
I
cause
don't
any
know.
riots on YouTube, but androgyny is known as satanic in the Bible. I think the Antichrist is supposed to be androgynous. Um, so yeah, and I mean, I've given up with the whole male female emu debate because I've just started to really think that they're both, like you say, it's homogenous. The red line seems to be homogenous of the ancient kingdom, like broken up bits of the ancient kingdom made into one red line. One Piece seems to be just full of them ideas, these broken up systems that come back together. For example, the red scabbards. So for Emu to be made up of more than one part, so for example, half Nefertari, half Nerona, male and female, or something like that, I'm completely down for. Like, I've entertained the idea that because I think that Emu and Joy Boy were brothers, but I have speculated that they were brother and sister, and the reason why Emu is so salty is because females don't get the lineage, which would explain why Kuina gave us such a deep
Yeah,
speech about women hitting puberty and how that affects their sort of right to inheriting power and stuff like that. Um,
the, the idiot older younger brother getting all the land, and that when they're probably the smarter,
yeah,
better choice. Which I would love if Joy Boy's real name was like Gomu or something like. There's got to be some reason that they called it Gumu, like instead of like the Nika when they're trying to hide it. And we have Emu, so it's like if that's their first name and Mu is their last name. Like you have like the person from the hero from Alabasta, Mahmoudine. Some connection, like maybe that was their
yeah. I
dad or
mean,
something.
yeah, maybe they're both Mu, and then the one that's primary is Go, right? Like, so Go Mu would be like the heir to the throne, whereas the other Mu is just the sort of useless prince, but or princess in this case, or maybe not. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it's all coming together. I'm definitely surprised at the Davy shout out. Like, we probably shouldn't have been because it's been years. We should have expected something, but I think this has thrown a lot of people off. But just going back down to the core of the story, like the pace of the story is moving extremely quick. Xebec more and more seems to be um, revealed to be not that much of a, I don't know, like just I don't know, a bit more of a
Not the traditional
yeah, yeah,
villain.
and the next chapter's 11, so Nika pose, who knows, like, but there does seem to be ties between him and Joy Boy, him and Nika. He middle fingers Emu and says about Davy Jones. So it definitely is a twist, and Zebek might not be the villain that a lot of people expected him to be.
I think everybody's a great character a lot in the story. Like I'm trying to figure out if it's just a duality or if it's like a trinity kind of thing. Like I liken it to if you've seen the Clint Eastwood movie The Good, Bad,
Yeah,
and the Ugly. Like you have the good, you have the
final.
bad, and then this third individual who's it's a three-way. But in the same sense, it's like okay, we have Blackbeard and Luffy, both have ideas of freedom and of moving and moving on. One is more, I would say, like a less moral, maybe a more selfish, although Luffy can be selfish, but usually his more like a fair or a justified kind of freedom, or maybe even self control a little bit. Whereas Blackbeard is like might is right kind of power thing. And then you have Emu, who is more like the control, or control to the point of being hurtful. Like if you control everything with no freedom, Like you have necessary evil where you let things happen, or people have to be enslaved, or people have to die in order for the status quo to
Right,
continue.
right.
And even that, there's a negative
Which
and
is
a
how we
positive to
get
all
down to
sides.
like Emu's whitewashing, yeah, this idea of absolute law and stuff like that, and basically sterilizing everything so nothing can grow or survive. But unfortunately, as One Piece is telling us, that way ends with pain and suffering, and we get children that really have bad sort of dark perspectives of the world, and they grow up to do nasty and terrible things. Usually, sometimes they can overcome it. So yeah, I think that is definitely one of the core, if not the core message of One Piece is, you need the both. You need Blackbeard and you need Luffy. And yeah,
I really think that they're going to show that Emu is an answer to a problem that was long ago. Like that
agreed.
primordial world was probably because of chaos and destruction, and they needed to stop it and to slow it down and control it in order for like people to live or to go on. So they got the power to control, but then they overdid the power, and because they hated the memory of what happened with the out of control chaos or freedom, they went too far in the
I
other
agree.
direction.
I
So
agree.
like this, basically like the strict parent who used to party when they were a kid or something like that, like they, or at least
Yeah,
vice versa
and this
kind of thing.
idea
So
that
yeah,
like they might have become what so the ancient kingdom might have been in a really shit state. They develop technology to advance their position. They become very cozy, and then they basically like become greedy because of complacency. And then Emu steps in, offers a deal to the 20 kingdoms to resolve that, resolves it. But then Emu doesn't want to drop her power either. 800 years later, Emu's become the exact same thing that she sort of swore to destroy, and now is perpetuating the same sort of atrocities and miseries that caused Emu as a child to have the perspective she has now. So I think, yeah, it's probably going to be a
well, it's
tragedy at the
also
end.
trust versus
Say
loyalty.
again?
Emu doesn't trust anybody. The only one. It's also trust versus loyalty. Like Emu has to maintain power because Emu does not trust anybody to carry on their will. If they die in that, then the person might not do the exact thing that they're going to do. So they have to have servants who are
Because
loyal to them.
not
Whereas Luffy and
I,
everybody else in the story who dies, they have trust in their Nakama, that their willpower, that they'll carry
yeah,
on with
I think the nuance there is that like
if they die.
these servants, like the Holy Knights, probably aren't loyal to Emu. They're probably bound to Emu. Loyalty is probably not absolute enough
Yeah,
for Emu's ideals, right? Like, Oda might give us a load of reasons, like her
slave. Yeah,
childhood again, like we said, they might have been betrayed or something like that. But yeah, like it definitely seems that Emu is isolated, is untrusting, vengeful, well, not vengeful, just absolute, like we said, like absolute, like doesn't take any shit, like and doesn't take any risks, which is
well, it's kind of
unfortunate
like
because the world government's
apathy.
absolutely rubbish.
It doesn't seem like they have a lot of feelings. Yeah, except possibly anger. I mean, it's almost kind of like Sanji's brothers. I mean, supposedly they're not supposed to have any emotions, but they still have like some of the negative ones, like the stronger emotions, like hate or lust or something, like whatever's in them.
Yeah,
But the Eden was like apathy, and only certain things that they truly hate maybe die over time, like Joy Boy or the Decoy.